Here we are, another YouTube presentation. Joseph Toscano and Kelly doing all the hard work as usual, the producer. But that's what it is. You've got in life, you've got show ponies, me, and you've got draft horses, Kelly, to do all the work. That's the way life is meant to be. Well, it's not meant to be like that, obviously. Now, we spare no expense to get you the best locations in Melbourne. And if you can guess what this location is, you'll get a complimentary form to join public interest before corporate interest. I bet you'll never guess where we are, and it is not the gate of Hades. Today I'd like to talk about, or discuss, or ramble on, about institutional malaise, an institutional meltdown, institutional collapse. Because my opinion, this is only a personal opinion, is that the major issue we face as Australians is apathy. Now, apathy is a logical response to powerlessness. And over the last decade, we have seen something in the history of this country we have not seen for a very long time. We have seen the public humiliation and destruction of the credibility of institutions which have formed the building blocks of our society. Institutions running from religious organisations with a history of over 5,000 years to political parties and political systems. And unfortunately, apathy is the very thing that those in exercise power and authority want in the population. The state relies on two things to control people. One, it relies on violence. It has a mandate on violence. It relies on apathy. People feeling so browbeaten they don't believe they can actually fight City Hall. I know that seems extraordinary. People believe they can't fight City Hall. And that is the mentality we have today. Knowledge without action is useless. If you know somebody down the road is punching up his wife or girlfriend or whatever, and you do nothing about it, that knowledge is useless. It's the same in life generally. If you've got knowledge about the weaknesses, the inequalities that exist in society, and you decide to do nothing about it, it's just that knowledge is useless to you. It's totally useless. And today, we have an avalanche, a tsunami of knowledge which we can access at any time. I could access the population of Pitcairn Island within 30 seconds by talking to a machine called Google. Google do that, right? And they could tell me the current population of Pitcairn Island is 46 and they're looking for new migrants. And it's a place you need to go. They don't have institutions there. It's just a British colony. But getting back to this, so this institutional meltdown has been fundamental in destroying faith in society. Fundamental. We'll start off with religious organisations. We have religious organisations that have a history that goes back 5,000 years. And I'm not talking about Indigenous or First Nations beliefs, which go back 60,000 years. I'm talking about religious organisations that were created since settlement began, mainly based on a patriarchy, whether it's Jewish, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christian, whether it's Hindu, and the list goes on and on. And the Royal Commission, instigated by the Gillard-led Labor government, institutionalised child abuse, destroyed the reputations of religious organisations in this society. In the past you relied on religion and the state to give you your bearings in society, unless, like me, you're an anarchist. You didn't rely either on the state or religious organisations, but 99.99% of people are not anarchists. They believe or have faith in the institutional structures that they live under. The destruction of religion as a guiding force in our society has profound impacts on people. It has profound impacts in terms of, if you can't believe people who claim they are representatives of God on earth and doing God's will and interpreting God's word, and they are involved in child abuse, who can you believe? And the issue isn't bad apples in a barrel. Every barrel has bad apples. There are bad anarchists, bad members of political parties. Issue, if there is religious organisation, wasn't the fact there were bad apples in the barrel. The issue was that the leadership of these religious organisations, especially the Roman Catholic Church, did everything they could legally and illegally to hide the truth and allow the cancer to spread through the organisation. So it's no accident that in 2019 that over 30% of Australians do not believe in God. Then if you can't believe in those religious organisations purport to represent God's word on earth, you then rely on the institutional structures. And there are three institutional structures that are important in Australian society. One is Parliament, which supposedly gives a voice to the people and gives the people the opportunity to be involved in making the laws of this country, because that's the role of Parliament, is to make laws, inverted commas. And the laws they can make is obviously determined by what the constitutional arrangements are. So you've got Parliament. Now, I think over the last 2 decades, it is no exaggeration to say that parliamentary debate, parliamentary behaviour, and the type of legislation which has gone through during the deregulation, privatisation, corporatisation, globalisation of capitalism in this country and around the world has basically been little more than a rubber stamp. And it's quite extraordinary that 26 million people, actually 25.3 million, living on a continent have poverty, that 700,000 children live under the poverty line, that children go hungry to school, that 30% of Australians rely on less than $400 a week to survive, that some people on social security benefits rely on less than $250 a week to survive, while the average wage is about $1,400 a week. So I think what has happened is people have little faith in Parliament, and that was demonstrated during the last election, where we saw the largest group of young people who are enrolled to vote who have refused to vote. Whether they do it consciously, unconsciously, I don't know, but it's part of that apathy towards Parliament, because people now believe that Parliament basically represents the interests of those with power. And nothing highlights this than what's happened in the last few weeks. For example, with all the information that's come out about Crown casinos in Australia, it's quite ludicrous. You have people who are legally, in inverted commas, laundering hundreds of millions of dollars, getting away with it scot-free for government stamps saying you're in a VIP jet. We won't look in your suitcase to see how many millions of dollars you've got, as long as you go to a casino and gamble it, and we're quite happy to receive the tax revenue, the means and the ends. But if you send $100 overseas, if you're a refugee or an asylum seeker or an ordinary Australian, you send $100 overseas to somebody, you can have the federal police knocking on your door like a friend of mine did for money laundering. And it's becoming almost impossible for people to send small sums of money overseas to assist people in dire need in refugee camps, because it's considered to be money laundering. While you've got people like this who are the government has actually rubber stamped their behaviour. So we have now got a situation where Parliament is not passing laws that benefit the community. Although the community has elected the representatives to Parliament for a variety of reasons, the laws that have been passed by our Prime Minister and his government, the coalition government, and the laws are quite interesting. What we've seen over the last few weeks is my favourite Prime Minister. Look, I don't particularly dislike this man. I think his name's Scott Morrison, but I'm going to call him from now on Unfunded Empathy. I like to see the man go to church. I like to see him, tell us about his Christian fundamentalist beliefs. And I do like to see that his Christianity really has no empathy, because I think a lot of people believe that type of stuff. So it's good to see. So from now on, it won't be Mr. Scott Morrison PM, it'll PM Unfunded Empathy. I remember Malcolm Fraser, there was reeds under the beds, he never got away with that. Well, I think Unfunded Empathy gives us an insight into the mind of these people who are passing laws which are pauperising, marginalising
ordinary Australians, especially those on casual employment, students, people on social security benefits, people on low wages, which makes up about 65% of the Australian population. So no wonder people are apathetic towards Parliament, and no wonder some people are now talking about some dictator coming in and cleaning out the Aegean stables. No, I haven't put up my name up for that job yet, okay? I don't like all shit. So the Aegean stables, Hercules, the Aegean stables, maybe you'll get the joke. Secondly, then we've got the armed forces. Currently, we are seeing people in court, or about to go to court, who have leaked information about the activities of the Australian armed forces in Afghanistan, which really make terrible reading. If you can't trust your armed forces to do the right thing, and you can't trust Parliament, who can you trust? Well, maybe we can trust the police. Well, those of you who are old enough will remember the Fitzgerald inquiry in Queensland in the early 1980s, which cleaned out the Aegean stable in Queensland. Then we had the Woods inquiry in the 1990s in New South Wales, which cleaned out that Aegean stable. And now we have the Andrews Labor government and the opposition running a mile away from the need for a royal commission into the Victorian police force. We have a limited royal commission into one police informant. So if you can't trust the police, and you can't trust the armed forces, and you can't trust religious organisations, and you can't trust Parliament, I know who you can trust. You can trust the financial sector. Oops, I just remembered, didn't we have a Royal Commission of the financial sector which highlighted the predatory behaviour of these organisations in order to maximise profits for their major shareholders? I mean, it makes reading where we see the lives of thousands of Australians, tens of thousands, destroyed in their quest for profit. Selling insurance to dead people, selling advice which they don't give, charge for advice they didn't give, giving the wrong advice, putting people into investments which would not maximise their return, selling insurance to people which they will never be able to claim, and the list goes on and on. So I'm at a loss I'm at a loss. We can't trust the religious organisations, we can't trust Parliament, we can't trust the Army, we can't trust the state police force, we can't trust the financial sector. Who can we trust? I know. We can trust the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus. Because I am sure the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus would never let us down. We have a crisis. We have a crisis of faith. Because we are social animals. We do believe in social cohesion. There's a lot of us and we need to get on. And it's not a matter of us each having guns like the United States and shooting each other up because we don't like each other. So if you can't trust the organisations that are there, both religious and secular, to do the right thing by you, who can you trust? And why haven't we been able to trust these organisations? And the answer is exceptionally simple. It's so simple, even I know it. And I'm a simple person. It's very simple. Accountability. There is during the deregulation phase of development of capitalism, and the globalisation phase, and the corporatisation phase, and the privatisation phase, what we've seen is governments passing legislation which remove regulations which have protected people for generations, whether it's in the workplace, where workplace theft, and I'm not talking about employees stealing from employers, but I'm talking about wage theft, employers stealing from employees, is common. In Ballarat, where the Ballarat Trades Hall did an investigation of businesses in Ballarat, 55% were paying people under 25 under the award rate. Under the award rate. So it's not as if it's an isolated thing. It is something that's occurring across the country. That all the institutions are supposed to be in place to protect us don't protect us. And when there are laws in place which says, go to this organisation, go to this ombudsman, go to this consumer affairs group, and they will look after your interest, the reality is they're underfunded and understaffed, and they're not able to deal with the complaints. And this is done on purpose, because we've got the veneer of a democratic society, the veneer of society that's cohesive, the veneer of a society that's fair, the veneer of a society that has all the right boxes, to tick in order to get some justice. The reality is you can't get justice. For example, Mr. Farouk, who was just released from jail after 12 years for a murder he didn't commit because of the shenanigans of the Victorian police, made one very important point. He said, when I was in court, I relied on an underfunded legal aid system. They had all the solicitors and QCs they wanted funded by the state government. There is no way he would have been able to receive a fair trial. It's the same with the justice system. Let's get to the justice system now. We say, justice is equal for all. Justice is blind. Well, if you go to the county court in Victoria, you'll notice this statue of a blind justice with a scale. The dilemma is, what they forgot to put in the scale was money. The more money you have, the easier it is to avoid any sentencing or any real penalty. Look at all the people who are responsible for the atrocities that occurred against children during the investigation into child abuse. How many have gone to jail? Look at the Banking Royal Commission. How many people have been charged? They don't. And they won't. Some will, the majority won't. Because they've got money and they can actually buy the best lawyers money can buy and delay, justice. And when it occurs, it's a home sentence. So, if you can't rely, you can rely on the corporate sector. Now, I know that you now rely on large corporations to survive. See, the mission statement of a corporation is very simple. It's a very simple mission statement. To maximise profits for the major shareholders, irrespective of the human, social and environmental costs. No wonder we find ourselves in this situation now. Public interest before corporate interest was set up for that very reason, to once again put the interests of the public, that's the many, before the interests of the few, the 1%ers. And I'm not talking about illegal motorbike gangs. I'm talking about the 1%ers who are much more dangerous. That 1% that owns the means of production, distribution, exchange and communication. So I implore you to think about joining public interest before corporate interest. We're not just a political party, we also want to become a social movement, because apathy plays into their hands. Violence, they live on violence, the firewood which keeps the state in power. If you want to change things, we need massive civil disobedience. And in order to get massive civil disobedience, we need your help. We need you to join public interest before corporate interests. You can leave a message on 0439 395 489. I'll send you an application form. You can write to me at Post Office Box 20, Parkville 3052. And if you're really bright, which I'm not, you can actually download an application from PIBCI, PIBCI.net. Remember, apathy will get you nowhere. It'll give you more of the same. Get off that keyboard. Shut down your iPad. Get out of that bed. Get out of that bathroom. Get out in the streets. Be part of a movement to change things, because the way we're going, all we're going to do if we do nothing is get more of the same.